Greetings all on this Saturday, the day of Saturn, and I came out about 2 hours ago to do a talk on burdock and couldn't believe the state of the local burdocks that I'd seen just a few weeks ago. Just how dry they are and how scorched the earth is, even though we've had like some torrential rain in the last week. I'm going to show you. So here is the local burdock, and it's probably about 6.5 feet tall. It's much taller than me. And look, here's a burr sticking on my skirt. Yeah, I mean, you can identify burdock by its, by its large, expansive leaves. You can hear I'm in a city. And it has purple flowers that kind of look a bit thistle-like, actually. So its name is burdock. Its botanical name is Arctium lappa. It's a biennial, which means it has a 2-year lifespan. It comes up a bit like rosettes. I'll put a picture here so you can see the first year's growth. Here's first year's growth burdock. It's really noisy where I am now, but here's some hawthorn, and here is some first year burdock that's obviously grown from the offspring, the progeny of probably the second year ones that have completely dried out because of the hot weather, so they're much drier early. But here's my local burdock. I'm hoping to find a specimen that's a bit in better nick, that's a bit green, so I can talk about it. If not, I'm just going to have to do this video just on something like this. And there you can see the size of the leaf compared to my foot, but they grow much bigger. The seeds and the root are what's used in medicine, and the root is a taproot that can reach 1 meter, 1.5 meters long. Normally the leaves are very, very huge, and it's a sort of, you know, it's a large kind of formidable plant. It isn't like one of the delicate little pansies. Well, this is quite a delicate plant. This is Plantago lanceolata, which is very elegant. It's a plant of Jupiter, and that's signified by its sort of expansive, kind of dominating energy. Jupiter's the largest planet in our solar system. I don't know if you've seen any of the amazing images on the James Webb telescope recently that are just absolutely stunning, of Jupiter and its moons. And Jupiter rules the liver, and therefore it rules the bile, because the bile is produced by the liver, and the bile helps to break down fats and oils. So indirectly Jupiter sort of affects fat digestion. It's a brilliant herb for sluggish digestion, and also sort of symptoms of expansion, like a swollen gut, a leaky gut, symptoms of heat or stagnation, if you know what that term means in herbal medicine, and excess heat. I'll talk more about that and its uses. So burdock exists in many parts of the earth. It's got a tradition in this country as it's been put in a drink called burdock and, I was going to say burdock and dandelion, but it's generally called dandelion and burdock, and it's made with the root of both the dandelion and the burdock, and it was a sort of popular beverage, sweet drink in the medieval period. I think the medieval period's like from the 5th century to about the 15th century. In this country it's been a traditional galactagogue, and that means it helps with milk production, and it's also a uterine stimulant actually. So the name burdock refers to these burrs, and the burrs are they also were used to be used by poor people as buttons, and so one of the common names of the plant is beggar's buttons. That's not a very nice name, but the way it sticks to your clothes really makes sense why it would be used for buttons. And also a guy called George de Mestral in the 1940s looked at the burrs under the microscope. Let's see if we can go right in. It's not quite microscopic. If you can see, at the end there's little hooks, and from that Velcro was developed, and I think even NASA scientists have used inspiration from the burdock plant for making equipment and spacesuits. Other names for burdock include sticky bugs, sticky willow. I think dock means sorrel, even though it's not a sorrel, and its botanical name is Arctium lappa, and I couldn't find out where that word comes from, but the word Arctium in Latin means unknown plant, and Arctus means bear, so I don't know if that has any relevance, and lappa means hand in Celtic, so I don't know any of those meanings, how they relate to the plant. The root is used in many cultures as a food, and it became very popular, or it is very popular in macrobiotic cooking for its health benefits and its kind of neutrality. It's kind of nourishing and neutral. In Japan it's called gobo. It's eaten in Japan, in China, in Korea. I'm watching a program now that's called Woo Young Woo, about an attorney who has autism, and Woo Young Woo only eats gimbap, a type of kind of food that's like sushi, and Woo Young Woo likes it with burdock. So I think some of the names of burdock in other languages include gobo in Japanese, but I could be pronouncing it very horrendously. Nubangzi. It's eaten in Russia. It's full of calcium, potassium, amino acids, iron. It has the chemical inulin, which is a prebiotic. That means it feeds the microbiome. It has minerals. It's often used in cases of anemia, and it has a chemical called polyphenol oxidase that transforms into tannin iron complexes. So the root could be dug up in the spring of a second year plant, or in the autumn of a first year plant. If anyone knows any information on how they like to harvest it, I'd really love to hear that, because I tend to buy it and not harvest it, but I am going to try and harvest it this autumn. And in food, the root is kind of earthy, kind of meaty, crunchy, crispy, sweet, artichokey. But the way it's extracted in medicine affects its property a lot. I think a traditional way of having the medicine is to dry the root from the first year, but I'd like to hear what other people do. and the root's very rich in inulin and mucilage. It has a bitter component called lapin A. It contains tannic acid, volatile oils, sulfurous acetylene, the tannin-rich iron complexes that I mentioned. It's also a remedy in a sort of famous anti-cancer mix called Essiac. And Essiac is a name that really kind of pisses me off, because it's named after a colonizer to Turtle Island called René Casset. And I'm not so annoyed that the recipe's used, but what annoys me is that it's her name backwards, and it doesn't give any acknowledgement to the indigenous people of Turtle Island, and also probably the Diné people that actually shared that recipe with her. So it's really important to acknowledge that Essiac tea is actually an indigenous prescription that's used probably in many ways, not just cancer, but it's been very popularized, especially in the West, for people living with cancer. And there's a charity called the Cloud Trust who actually disseminate Essiac, and they call it Essiac, and I think that needs to be addressed, that it's called that. So in the journal, the Asian Journal of Chemistry, they describe the constituents as polyphenols, volatile oils, that means chemicals that easily evaporate, that the fresh fruit's very high in inulin, amino acids, the sulfur, acetylene, I can't even say it, multiple polyacetylene, caffeic acid derivatives, bitter glucosides, and one of the bitters is called arctiopyrosin. The reason I'm telling you these is so you can look them up in studies, because these are the chemicals that have actually been studied. It has chemicals called lignans, and Arctium is one of the studied ones. It's probably, the root is about up to 10% mucilage, which is a kind of soft, fluffy, polysaccharide rich constituent. The flavonoids, a lot of them are tannins, which are condensed tannins. It contains the resins arctogenin, which is anti-tumour. The seeds contain phenolic acids, luteolin, quercetin, rhamnocide, arctine, which are all anti-cancer, and would explain some of the anti-cancer properties of the plant. It contains caffeic acid derivatives and cyanuric derivatives, which are in plants like artichoke, and chlorogenic acid, which is in other liver and pancreatic supporting herbs. The root contains vitamin A, vitamin C, zinc, silicone, cobalt, selenium, manganese, thiamine, riboflavin, and niacin. So it's a really nutritive herb. This picture is of someone called the Berry Man, and the Berry Man is covered in loads, like hundreds and hundreds of birds from Burdock. And it's a tradition that happens every year in Queensferry near Edinburgh on the second Friday of August. We're in August now, by the way. This is August, bank holiday weekend, the weekends of Carnival. And this ceremony was first recorded in 1687, and it's a tradition where this guy who collects the birds himself and wears a balaclava and covers his body in it, and then carries, is adorned with lots of plants, carries these kind of ornate flowers throughout Queensferry, and is guided by sort of two plant bearers who guide him through the city, probably terrifying kids left, right and centre, and he's fed through whiskey through a straw. And this tradition is to keep to ward off evil spirits and keep good luck in the town. And this is a tradition that's been going on for hundreds of years in Scotland, which I found quite interesting. So the actions of the plant obviously depend on how it's extracted and where it's grown, but it's depurative, and that refers to a quality of being purifying and detoxing, and some of the old-fashioned terms are like blood cleansing, and especially the seeds. I'll try and pop out some seeds later for you to see. It's a glycemic regulator, so that means it helps to normalise or balance blood sugar so you don't get spikes. And we don't really want to have blood sugar spikes for many reasons, because when you have blood sugar spikes, apart from the fact that glucose kind of has these end products that stick to organs, they're called glycation end products and Amadori products. When you have high blood sugar, then you secrete insulin and insulin growth factor, and they're actually, long-term not good for us to have like overexposure to insulin and insulin growth factors, especially with the high prevalence of metabolic syndromes in late-stage capitalism. So it's wonderful to be able to eat a food that's actually a glycemic regulator, because it's something we all need very much. And also our blood sugar rises when we're very stressed, when we release cortisol. So even though it's not a nervine tonic, this herb, it helps regulate glucose in a different way. It's also a diuretic, and that means it helps stimulate urination. So that's really, really useful with its other properties of stimulating digestion and bile production. It helps with elimination of toxins from the body. And if you're in a toxic state, it is also anti-mutagenic, because many toxins can actually affect the DNA in our cells, and studies have shown that burdock is anti-mutagenic and reduces oxidative stress and chemical stress. So another word for being a glycemic regulator is the fresh root extract actually is hypoglycemic. It's choleretic, meaning that it stimulates bile production, and bile is produced by the liver. It's anti-rheumatic, and that means it reduces the pain in joints that could be caused by gout, that could be caused by rheumatoid arthritis, or could be caused by a very toxic diet. The fresh root is antibacterial and antifungal, and all these facts that I'm saying are actually from studies. They're not just sort of abstract things that I'm saying, but the traditional use substantiates all of the science. The seed is diaphoretic, and that means it helps to bring on a fever when a fever is like burning up and it needs to break. Diaphoretics are used, and they promote kind of circulation to the outside of the body. Instead of the core being hot, it moves the heat outwards so you can break a sweat. It's a remedy I would say that's kind of like really useful for all constitutions. In Ayurveda they say that it pacifies Pitta and Dosha constitutions, but it's a kind of neutral remedy, and when prepared properly it's quite safe for chronic use. I remember when I was studying herbal medicine over 20 years ago that one of my teachers, Julie Whitehouse, used to say it's quite a pushy remedy, and I think what she meant by that is that it supports pushing detoxification, but when it's cooked in traditional foods, I don't think it's as pushy as the Western use of tinctures. And when I was studying herbal medicine, it used to be used a lot for teenage acne and often very red skin conditions. I remember we used to use it, and we also used to use it for people who get swollen glands and to drain the lymph nodes. There's a book I really like, well, there's actually 2 volumes I think, called The Energetics of Western Herbs, and it's using traditional Chinese meridian and language for Western herbs, and it's written by Peter Holmes, and it's a book I really like to refer to, especially when I'm teaching. And Peter Holmes describes the herb as mild with minimal chronic toxicity. Yeah, so a bit contradicting what I said when I was learning about this herb, that it's very pushy. And I think maybe what was meant that it's pushy, that's like if you have blockages or obstructions in the body, it might not be something you want to use. So if you had, like, you know, tumours in lymph nodes, or if you had bowel obstruction or something, maybe it's too pushy then. And it's also dissolving, stimulating and restoring, and dissolving is very kind of classic for jovial Jupiter herbs. In Chinese medicine, it's tropism. That means the area it acts on, that it's attracted to, is the kidney, bladder, liver, gallbladder, lung meridians, and it governs the fluid and air bodies. It's good for all biotypes and all constitutions, and it's indicated for metabolic toxicosis with damp. And that would translate into kind of allopathic language as eczema, psoriasis, weeping, skin conditions, gout, arthritis, uropathies like gout, and cancer. It dissolves deposits and kind of clears through lymph congestion. It harmonises kidney chi. That could be something like too much urine or too little urine, and that also kind of tallies with the fact that it has so many minerals. So minerals tend to balance over urination and under urination. Yeah. It also helps with uterine chi stagnation, so that might be manifested by amenorrhea, which is like not having periods, or by dysmenorrhea, which is painful periods. I'm trying to think what else I can say about the herb. It's also used for external wind heat, which could be a fever with a sore dry throat, dry skin and thirst. It's also used in bladder, stomach chi deficiency, which could be a prolapsed organ, intestinal bloating, which I said before is a very Jupiter symptom, and hardness as well. It kind of pushes through hardness, but I wouldn't want to use it if there was obstructions. It's a shame I haven't got a beautiful specimen for you today, but I'll put a photo to end with. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Behind me is a fair. Yeah. Bye. Hi. So to conclude the Burdock video, I thought I would end with some Nicholas Culpeper, written in the 1700s. Dock. Many kinds of these are so well known that I shall not trouble you with description of them. My book grows big too fast. Government and virtues. All docks are under Jupiter, of which the red dock, which is commonly called bloodwort, cleanses the blood and strengthens the liver. But the yellow dock root is best to be taken either when the blood or liver is affected by choler. All of them have a kind of cooling but not alike drying quality, the sorrel being the most cold, the bloodworts the most drying. Of the burdock I have spoken already by itself. The seed of most other kinds, whether in gardens or fields, do stay lax, and fluxes of all sorts, the loathing of the stomach through choler, and this is helpful for those that spit the blood. I've just realised, I think I'm talking about yellow dock here. Hold on, let me just check if there's a burdock section. A minute. Okay, rewind, because I was reading about the wrong kinds of dock. So back to burdock, Arctium, lappa. They are also called personata and loppy major, great burdock and clodbur. It is so well known, even the little boys who pull off the burrs and throw and stick upon each other, I shall spare to write any description of it. They grow plentifully by ditches and watersides, and by the highways almost everywhere through this land. And I think that's why I found it difficult to find today, because everything was dried up. Venus challenges this herb for her own, and by its leaf or seed you may draw the womb by which you may please, either upwards by applying it to the crown of the head, in case it falls out, or downwards in fits of the mother, by applying it to the soles of the feet. Or if you would stay in its place, apply it to the navel, and that is a good way to stay the child in it. The burdock leaves are cooling, moderately drying, and discussing withal, whereby it is good for old ulcers and sores. A dram of the roots taken with pine kernels helps them that spit foul, mattery, and bloody phlegm. The leaves applied to places troubled with the shrinkage of sinews and arteries give much ease. So here's a use for the leaves that contemporary herbalists don't really use, I don't think. The juice of the leaves, or rather the roots themselves, given to drink with old wine, doth wonderfully help the biting of any serpents. Makes me wonder how many people were bitten by serpents in England. And root beaten with a little salt and laid on the place suddenly eases the pain thereof, and helps those that are bit by a mad dog. The juice of the leaves being drank with honey provokes urines, and remedies the pain of the bladder. The seed being drank in wine 40 days together doth wonderfully help the sciatica. The leaves bruised with the white of an egg, and applied to any place burnt with fire, gives sudden ease and heals it up afterwards. The decoction of them fomented on any fretting sore or canker stays the corroding quality, which must be afterwards anointed with ointment and made of the same liquor, hog's grease, nitre, and vinegar boiled together. I haven't got a clue what nitre is. I'm going to have to look up some of this. The roots may be preserved with sugar and taken fasting, or at other times for the same purposes, and for consumptions, I think that's TB, the stone and the lask. The seed is much commended to break the stone, because it caused to be expelled by urine, and is often used with seeds and other things to that purpose.